a name popped into my head, the name of Tom Dooley. Now, you really have to go back a number of years to understand who he was. Well, when I was in 6th grade, in the spring of 1954, he was in the pantheon that every 11-year-old kid had of the people he admired, along with Mickey Mantle and Roger Bannister. Tom Dooley. Who was he? Well, he was a young Navy doctor, fresh out of medical school. And he got out of medical school. He would have been around maybe 25 years old. And he was serving on a ship as the medical officer on the ship. And off the coast of Vietnam, the ship picked up 1,000 refugees. 1,000 refugees, and took them on board. Tom was the only doctor on board, so he plunged in and he did really a backbreaking job of helping these people who were not only refugees but suffering from all kinds of ailments. They were not a healthy people. And in ministering to them as a medical doctor, his excitement grew with every single day and with every single case. He saw how putting a simple cast healed a broken arm. He saw how a simple lancing relieved a swollen hand. He saw how the very simplest medical treatment brought smiles to pain-filled faces. But Tom saw something else too. He realized that in helping these people, that made him happier than he had ever been before in his whole life. He really kind of found himself and found his future on that ship, helping people. So when his hitch in the Navy was over, he went right back to Asia to work among the poor. And he did that. I meant to Google this to see how long that went on for a good number of years. Possibly till the end of his life. I don't know that. Well, what does that have to do with the Beatitudes? Something he said. He was famous enough that people would want to interview him and get his take on things. And one of the things they wanted to know about was what was it that motivated him to give up certainly a lucrative medical career in the United States and work among the poorest of the poor in Asia. You know what he said? He said he had always loved the Sermon on the Mount, especially the Beatitudes, and one reason he loved the Beatitudes was because they promise happiness. Blessed means happy, Tom said, which is absolutely correct. For my meager knowledge of Greek, the word is makarios. It can be translated happy. And he said, that's what I mean to be. And then he shared his own personal vision of the Beatitudes. He was one of them to illustrate. Let me read his own words here that I found. Blessed are the mourn means something special to me. Mourn, as used in the Bible, does not mean to be unhappy. It simply means to be more aware of the sorrow in the world than of the pleasure. If you're extra sensitive to sorrow, he went on to say, and you do something to make that lighter for someone, you can't help but be happy. That's just the way it is. Now, an interesting take on the Beatitudes. I was fascinated by that. It's refreshing. Different, too. Different because we usually think of the Beatitudes as being addressed only to the sorrowing, the poor, the lonely, the homeless. Dooley saw them as being addressed also to those who help those people who are mourning and who are hungry and who are homeless. It's also refreshing because we don't just read the Beatitudes and rejoice that someday in the future, God will make sorrowing people happy. On the contrary, if we read these well with a sincere and open heart, we are motivated to do something to help these people just as Dooley did. And all of us can do that. There's not a single one of us that can't reach out in some way to a needy brother or sister. Came upon an example that will illustrate that. One day during the Great Depression in the 1930s, a government agency had the job of traveling through the Appalachian country of Tennessee, maybe, to give small grants to poor farmers who were wondering whether they were going to have money to buy seed or to make repairs on their homes. And one day, this agent came across a woman living in a shack. It had no floor. Several windows were broken. It was covered with tar paper. The woman was barely scratching out a living on a tiny plot of land. And the agent said to her, "If the government gave you $200, what would you do with it?" The woman thought for a moment and said, "I reckon I'd give it to the poor." That woman is a living example of the spirit of the Sermon on the Mount. It was people like her that Jesus said, "Blessed are you